Everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamey Daddy channel. We're going to jump into this video because this video is designed to be some sort of a correction and update so that we can set the record straight on my last video. By the way, I appreciate all of you who've watched that video and who have been, basically commenting and just participating. It really means a lot. It drives me to further my research. And so far, I mentioned that The Division 2 actually had about 4 studios working on it. So far, I think that information is inaccurate. In fact, I'm certain that the information is inaccurate because I've continued to dig in and more development has come up. And I have to say, for those of you who are Division fans, I think you're going to be delighted by what we found out so far. Now, this is basically one of the interesting things about, the Division development. And one of the biggest issues that we've heard on the internet so far with the Division 3 and this new Star Wars announcement is there probably won't be enough focus or enough manpower to be able to release this game. I don't think that's the case anymore. So we're going to jump in and see exactly what we have. Now, if you enjoyed the content, you can do whatever you please. Let's jump into the video right now. So The Division, basically, as a franchise, has not necessarily been the franchise that's been worked on by one studio. I know everyone basically looks at massive Ubisoft as, pretty much the big name on hand. But many of us who are inside of the game, because we're gamers, we know about Red Storm because we've actually seen them. Also, some of us know about Ubisoft Reflections because they've also participated in some of the, what do they call it? The ETFs. They did an ETF one time where people who were in the United Kingdom could go to Ubisoft Reflections and actually play a portion of some new content that was coming out in the Division. So these 3 studios are actually quite known by, some of us in the Division community. But other studios that have worked on the Division 2 that are not necessarily on the front and center in regard to community relations are actually playing very critical roles. And on counting, based on what's listed on Wikipedia, I think there's a total of about 8 studios that have worked on the Division 2. Let's look at them one by one. And I'm going to basically try my best to not only look at the studio, but look at their makeup, look at the scope in which they worked on the Division 2 and try to assess their manpower. And I think at the end of the whole video, you're going to come up with the conclusion that it's not going to be a matter of not having enough hands on deck that's going to not bring a Division 3 game. It's more than likely going to be other factors. So this is Ubisoft Sofia. I think Ubisoft Sofia is located in Bulgaria, somewhere in Europe. Oh no, I saw the place that it was. It's in Bulgaria. Yes, I'm correct. It's actually located in Bulgaria. And they seem to have a decent sized team. If you usually look at the team photos of a studio, you can gain a sense of kind of what the studio's strength is. Now, this picture may be somewhat old. They may have expanded. You always want to go with the assumption that the studio has expanded. And even if people may have left, they've probably filled in those roles, especially if they've had projects to work on. And if you even go down to look at the projects they've worked on, they worked on the Division 2, they've worked on Assassin's Creed Rogue Remastered, Assassin's Creed Origin, the DLC, The Curse of the Pharaohs. But on the Division 2, they actually have listed here that they worked on the main game, and they also worked on the Pentagon and the Last Castle. These were DLCs that were put out before Warlords of New York came out. So the scope of this development studio is they know how to make our missions. Most likely, I would almost say level design is most likely what they worked on, or maybe QA testing, but something that would have relieved Massive from the workload of stuff that they had to do. And if you even ask me what is the strength of a studio like this, I will throw out a guess and say their talent number is somewhere around 60 to 100. So a small studio, but still a juggernaut in able to bring us this content. Now, however many people feel about the content, you cannot argue that the Pentagon missions were actually pretty good, but nonetheless, I think that would have been structured perhaps by your game director here, or maybe your level director or senior game designer, and then that would have been mandated and passed on to them to just get the work done. So that's 1 out of the 8. The second one is Ubisoft Leamington. Now, they even mention here, Ubisoft Leamington is one of the Ubisoft's youngest studios working on Tom Clancy's The Division. They basically slap it on here that, hey, we do Division work. Hey, this is what we're kind of about. So you go and look at Leamington. They're located, I think, somewhere in the UK, yes. and they seem to have a decent strength of, talent, and even people who are experts here at game development in different fields, and they seem to be of a similar size as Sophia. So now we not only have two studios that maybe can boast of somewhere close to 100 employees apiece, we're looking at somewhere, if we want to be conservative, 60 game developers in different scopes from two studios that are assisting or have assisted in the division. Now, before I continue to go on, note that these studios have not announced any games that they're working on. Perhaps they are studios, in the way Ubisoft sets up its hierarchy, that their jobs are designed to support major development from other Ubisoft studios. And when we get to Ubisoft Anarchy, I'll tell you why I feel so. And so let's move on to the next one. This is Ubisoft Reflections. These folk have worked on the Division, I think, from the Division 1. And so they are not new to the pack. In fact, Ubisoft Reflections, they are bosses when it comes to the Division franchise. They know what they're doing. They worked on the Division 1, and I think they also worked on the Division 2 as well. And I think they're based in the United Kingdom. One of the really interesting things, though, that you'll see is Leamington and Reflections seem to have some sort of a conglomerate. So I'm not certain if they're separate studios or if they're separate campuses in the same region. So that's something that I have to go back and basically, take my time to look at. But if you look at their job design, I said their job description, this is their job descriptions between both studios. Look at the number of hires that they have in unannounced project category. This is insane when it comes to hands on deck. I can almost tell you that without doubt, these studios are going to touch your Star Wars game that's going to be coming out. This studio is going to touch your Avatar game in some level, on some, in some scope, except Massive wants to keep it exclusive, just with them, but more than likely. So another thing too is the Snowdrop engine basically has more experts on deck to work on this. And if they hire people, most likely going to be training them on that, and they're going to have the capacity, the knowledge, and the expertise to work on these games. I've also seen people that said it seems like Red Storm has their hands tied up working on other projects. Well, it is what it is, but if anybody wants to make a Division game, I don't think the problem is going to be manpower. Might be other things. And then we're going to look at Ubisoft. I think this is Reflections. I just spoke about them. And then another studio called Ubisoft Bucharest. This is in Romania. And they're also, basically a studio listed on Wikipedia that worked on the Division 2. The only difference, though, is I haven't seen anything on their website that stated that they've done so or done any work on the Division 2. So this, there it is. I'm sorry. This is Ghost Recon, and their work that's listed is on much more older titles, if you were to ask me. So I don't see anything that's stated as a Division 2 working on their studio, but it's listed on the Wikipedia page. So this may or may not be a studio that's actually touched the Division 2, but I'm not going to be surprised if they actually did and they're just not listing it on here. But still, it's not, like I said, a matter of having hands on deck. This is something that's there. And then we're going to move on to Ubisoft Anarchy. Anarchy, solid studio, basically AAA, huge team compared to the others. I mean, look at the picture here that they have. They have a lot of hands on deck. They even have a game that's upcoming for them. I think it's, I can't remember the name. They announced it on Ubisoft Forward. Was it them or another studio? I'm not necessarily certain, but I do know that, yes, they have some really big work going on. And they basically said, we've worked on Assassin's Creed multiplayer for several years and are currently on Tom Clancy's The Division, Ghost Recon Wildlands, and we've been able to put together a multiplayer experience, blah, 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 blah. So here again, we have another team that has expertise on working on Division. I can go over and over and over again and blah, blah, blah. Now, the final studio on the list is Ubisoft Shanghai. Now, this is the one that really shocked me, and I kept it all the way to the end just to be able to, show you guys what we're dealing with here. Ubisoft Shanghai boasts of having over 370 plus talents. That's basically their team of experts that work on their games. So what I think this means is whenever these big studios in Ubisoft, like there are some studios that are just juggernauts. They're the guys that actually are tasked with bringing out the big name games, right? So you have, I think, Ubisoft Montreal. I mean, that's one of those studios that, yes, they most likely work on big projects. Ubisoft Paris, probably a big major studio, massive entertainment. And then these other sister studios is what I call them. They basically, their job function is to support these big studios to work on these titles. In fact, I think I may have just uncovered how the heck it is Ubisoft can deliver you games consistently without a hiccup or delays of any unnecessary delays. It's because for some strange reason or some strange quiet nature of their company, they've been able to expand across the globe and have a slew, literally an army of developers that can actually bring you your games. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Division fans, I think we will have a Division 3 game if Ubisoft actually has that on the plate. And I think it would have good quality, at least the quality of Division 2, if nothing else. But at the same time, I feel like when we hear, a lot of talk about, well, there's not going to be enough time, there's not going to be enough manpower, I hope this video has been able to dispel that notion and set the record straight. If there's any reason a Division 2 game does not get released, it's not going to be as a result of lacking the resources when it comes to developers, when it comes to people who know what they're doing. It's more than likely going to be an issue where, they're making different shifts and different, decisions. Also, this Star Wars game is most likely, like I mentioned, going to also receive some level of things being split in order to make the project work, or Massive Entertainment might work on it individually. But I don't think that's how Ubisoft really plays, though. I think they might actually have other teams do some really cool stuff, and that game is going to be delivered in a good amount of time. Many people might say, well, how about the release windows, though? Are you trying to tell me that by 2022, we're going to be seeing a lot more games, or 2023? Just 2020, in a pandemic year, Ubisoft released Watch Dogs Legion, the third iteration of Watch Dogs, which is not as popular as a Division, by the way. I mean, I don't know how you guys don't think a Division 3 will come. Whatever. And then they released Immortals Phoenix Rising, and then they also released Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Some studios basically broke trying to release one game in this year. Ubisoft decided, you know what, let's just put 3 out there. Think about it. So I don't envision an impossible scenario where you have an Avatar game and a Star Wars game and then another game from Ubisoft in the same year. It's not for them. I don't think it's really a problem. You got to give it up to them, though. They know how to hustle. Yes, they have a reputation that is not favorable with the gaming community at large, but you got to give it up when it comes to hustling. I don't think there are many studios that hustle like these folks do. I'll get out of your hair. Thank you so much for your time and audience. Comment in the comment section. Let's keep this conversation going. Talk to you all soon. Peace out.